friend.
Welcome to Heavy Metal
History.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. I'm Dustin. If this is your first time checking us out, thank you. Maybe go back and check out some of our older episodes, check out our history episodes, give us a little bit of a listen there. This episode was recorded with Brody Uttley, the guitar player of the band Rivers of Nihil. He came on to talk about their new album, Where Owls Know My Name, as well as, obviously, his influences as a guitar player, what music got him into heavy metal, and we kind of do a new thing at the end where I get him to basically, if he could pick any members to make a band alive or dead, what would that be? And he comes up with a pretty interesting answer there. I like it. So their album comes out March the 16th on Metal Blade Records. Definitely go pick it up. I think it's going to be the best work the band has done to date. And I really like how Brody kind of describes the kind of maybe not so expected turn that a lot of people would want to see from them. And they took some chances on this record. And there's some really cool stuff. So go pick that up. Remember, sales always matter, especially for, a band like this, still trying to get their feet out there, trying to get, people to see them. This band's fucking great. So, yeah, this will be episode 45 with Brody Uttley of Rivers of Nihil. Start recording and all right, listeners, welcome to this week's episode of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. My guest this week is Brody, the lead guitar player from the band Rivers of Nihil. Brody, thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah,
so today we're going to talk about the new record, and before we get to that, the one thing we kind of like to start with are what's the one record or couple records that kind of got you into heavy metal, man? Like, what's that first one you remember getting a hold of and hearing?
Probably gonna be like a weird answer, but I specifically remember like the first like actual like heavy metal record that I had or heard being Ozzy Osbourne's record Down to Earth. My dad bought that CD when I was a kid because he really liked the one song on there. He said it reminded him of the Beatles. And that was sitting around the house, and I thought the album artwork looked scary, so I listened to it and thought it was cool.
And that was later on in the Ozzy kind of discography, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of a weird answer, but like I guess like the first like actual like heavy metal record that I like was like aware of and like old enough to understand it was probably the Black Album.
Album, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, we've been keeping this thing called the Metallica of basically like how many people say what Metallica record they've kind of been influenced by or remember getting, and it's really interesting seeing like the answers going up to the Black Album, but they rarely ever go past the Black Album.
Yeah, like I mean, I that was just like one of the first records that my dad got for me. I think if I were to like pick a favorite Metallica record, it would have to be Master of Puppets, but the Black Album was like the one that I heard and I was like, wow, this is cool, when I was like 10 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, who could ever forget like the Enter Sandman riff? I mean, that's...
Oh, yeah, of course. And as a guitar player, it's like the most obvious song to learn first,
Yeah, so that is an interesting record to start off with, Ozzy Osbourne. I haven't gone like super far into like his like newer discography stuff, but I do remember getting into like gosh, what was the one that had No More Tears on it and stuff like that?
Oh, that was No More Tears, right?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
I liked I think the main reason that I thought that Down to Earth was so cool was because of the guitar playing, which was Zakk Wylde, and he's still I mean, anyone can, make jokes about him all they want, but I mean, he's a legend, and he's still one of my favorite guitar players ever, just because of like what a huge badass he is,
Yeah, it's kind of weird to me that people would like talk down on Zakk Wylde just because of like whatever rock music he wants to do with like Black Label Society or what have you. I mean, the dude is a killer guitar player. There's a reason Ozzy Osbourne picked him to be in his band. I mean, the dude's no slouch.
No, I mean, I think the reason that he gets heat from like true metal guys or whatever, I think it's mostly because of like the biker aesthetic. But like I've just following that guy on like Instagram and stuff, like it's clear that like he's got like an awesome sense of humor. Like all of his videos that he posts are just like ridiculous. Like he does this thing on his Instagram where he posts marriage counseling videos, but it's just him alone in his car arguing with himself while like really somber 80s music plays over his radio. I mean, he's obviously like got a good sense of humor, but I think the reason that people hate on him, at least like I said, like the true metal dudes, is just because of the biker thing. But I mean, he's like, I think he's got some of the sickest vibrato of like all time on guitar, and like he's the guy that made me want to use a wah-wah pedal for the first time, just because I thought it was like the most badass sounding thing I had ever heard. So I mean, that first Ozzy record that I heard was definitely influential in getting me to take an interest in guitar.
Yeah, he's also one of those guitar players that definitely has a very noticeable guitar tone as well. Like when you hear it, know it's him playing it, and not very many people can like duplicate that.
No, and I mean that's a hard thing to do. I mean, especially nowadays when there's just so many bands and so many players out there. It's like to be able to instantly identify someone just based on how they play the instrument. I mean, that says something about the dude's like legacy. I mean, it's obvious to me. Yeah,
I was talking with a guest we had on like a couple weeks back, and they had mentioned like back in like the 80s and 70s you knew bands based on their guitar players, whereas like nowadays you don't really know a lot of the members in the band. It's like a faceless entity. It's just like the band. It's kind of an interesting thing that's kind of happened within the past couple of years, and I think it's just because there's so much music out there that's really hard to kind of separate yourself as a member in the band as opposed to being the band.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that, and it's also, I think, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even, I mean, up until recently, really, like you said, I think that like studio editing has played a large role in the kind of like removal of like personality in guitar players. Like, because like now, back in the 70s, as a guitarist, you just have to go to the studio and just like bust out a solo, and like all of your like little mistakes, and just noises and just like the things that make your guitar playing personal, I mean, they would stay in the recordings, but nowadays everything can be, every single note can be punched in, every single little pick scrape noise can be faded out. Like it's like everything is just like totally perfect and polished, and like I feel like, not to sound like an old guy or anything, but like I feel like editing is a good thing for a lot of reasons, but I think that some guys, guitar players especially, kind of lose their personality, with how far editing has come in the last couple of years.
Yeah, they seem to take it to that like style of perfectionism that loses like the soul of the guitar playing in it a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you mentioned Zakk being like probably one of your first influences. What are some other guitar players that kind of got you down the road of starting to play guitar, and how did you start playing guitar?
I guess like one of the first guitar players that I heard that made me want to pick up the guitar. I mean, well, I guess when I was like really little, like 5 maybe, my dad played Iron Butterfly's song Inagata Davida for me.
Yeah.
And there's like a music video that they did for that song where the guitar player is like playing this like bright red shiny guitar, and he's making all these like crazy elephant noises, and like I remember thinking that was one of the coolest things ever, but I was way too young to pick up a guitar at that point. But like probably around when I was maybe 11 or 12, I got interested in Eric Clapton's guitar playing, especially with his band Cream.
Yes.
I thought that like those Cream records, Disraeli Gears and Wheels of Fire, I listened to those like all the time, and I thought that he used the wah-wah pedal a lot as well, and I thought that like that was such a cool sound, and I think that specifically is what inspired me to like sell my PlayStation and my bike and like go out and buy a guitar, my first guitar and amp. Was hearing those early Clapton recordings, but he was like an early one for sure. Slash from Guns N' Roses is definitely one. Steve Vai is definitely another. Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, really just kind of like the quintessential like Guitar World magazine cover guys were like my, kind of gateways into the instrument. And then later on, I really got into, well, not that much later on, but like probably around the time I was maybe 14, I really got into that band. I really got into Children of Bodom.
Oh yeah.
And Alexi Laiho from that band. His playing was like unreal to me, and I think he's actually the guy that like got me into all the like super shredder dudes like Petrucci and Paul Gilbert and Joe Satriani and those guys.
Yeah, it's crazy too because Alexi was really young when they started Bodom. He was like 17, 16 years old, something like that. And
yeah,
man,
he started really early, and I mean, those guys have. It's weird for me to even think about it because like I remember seeing them on the tour cycle that they did for Hate Crew Death Roll, which I guess was like 2004 maybe. I remember seeing them with Chimera and Through the Eyes of the Dead.
Wow.
And like that's still a pretty fresh memory for me, and like now actually realizing like how long they've been a band and how many records they've released after that record, like it's like wild to me because I haven't really kept up on them, but like those guys are like they're like in their 40s now. They've got to be,
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like super influential, and he had the whole like heavy metal image thing that like I guess at that age I was kind of looking for, like, oh, he's got like the camouflage pants and like the death metal t-shirt, cool, So he was definitely an inspiration when I was around the age when you don't really know who you are yet.
So you were one thing I noticed you were talking about a lot of like those virtuoso kind of guitar players. Were you ever familiar? I assume you are, but like Jason Becker and Marty Friedman.
Oh yeah, I mean those are guys that like I didn't get into until later.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I actually heard about Jason Becker through watching an interview with Jeff Loomis, because like Nevermore was one of my favorite bands as well, and Jeff Loomis's playing is still like some of my favorite playing ever, and like I think he's actually the guy that turned me on to Jason Becker's playing, just watching interviews with him. And then Friedman, same thing. I think I heard about Marty Friedman through listening to interviews with like the Lamb of God guys or something like that. But those guys are both amazing, and it's crazy that Jason Becker is still composing music. I mean, even in the state that he's in, he's like got that, he's got what is
ALS?
ALS. He's got ALS, and then he writes music with like a device that he attaches to his head, and it like reads his like eye movements, and he can like enter MIDI notes on a computer screen and like compose like full orchestras just like through moving his eyes around. It's like pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, he's working on an album right now actually that he's been writing over the past few years, and he's one of those guitar players that I always try to tell people about because they don't really know about him because of his disease, because he kind of he couldn't really do anything except write music on his like computer and everything like that. But he would, in the heyday of like the 80s, him and Marty Friedman and like Paul Gilbert were just like the who's who of virtuoso guitar players, and like Yngwie as well. Yeah, no, I mean all the Shrapnel Records guys are just like unbelievable. Like
Well, we play the guitars, the Kiesel guitars, which used to be known as Carvin guitars,
Yep.
and Carvin was the company that designed those early Jason Becker guitars, and he had that numbers guitar,
Oh yeah.
and I actually got to hold the real numbers guitar when we went out to the Carvin offices. Like, I think it was back in 2014. The owner of the company, Jeff, he had the guitar in his office, and I didn't play it, I just held it though and like looked at it, and that was like a pretty surreal moment for
That's
me.
amazing, dude.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like, I was holding this guitar in my hand, and like the fact that it's not only like such an like expensive guitar, like in how much it's worth like monetarily, but also like the legacy behind it. I was just like terrified, and I gave it right back to Jeff, because I didn't trust myself with it. But yeah, like Jason Becker is just one of those guys that everybody needs to know about, especially if they're a guitar player.
Yeah, I have such an immense respect for like those virtuoso guitar players, because they prove that you don't need like vocals to do anything else, that you can just be this good at an instrument, and like that's all people will care about, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I think I listened to a lot of instrumental music for a long time. Like Steve Vai was like one of my favorite guitar players coming up, and like all of his stuff is it's like 90% instrumental, and I think that like I think through listening to like so much instrumental music in my life, it kind of like took a pretty big influence over like how I write music. Like I feel like with Rivers of Nile's songs, like the vocals are obviously like a huge part of it, but like I've had some people tell me before that like they could we could release an instrumental version of our record, and like they would be perfectly fine with listening to that, because there's enough textures and layers and atmospheres happening on our music without vocals to be a piece like all on its own. And I think that like listening to some of those like earlier instrumental records from those guys kind of helped to influence me into writing that way.
Yeah, I could see that. I haven't really thought about that myself, but now that you bring it up, I could definitely see that as like a thing, just having all the instrumental tracks there.
Yeah.
So getting actually to your band now, something I spotted really recently and heard, I saw that film Mayhem, and they play one of your guys' songs in the movie. How did that come about?
I don't know, actually. It was kind of just, and basically we just got an email from Metal Blade, and they were like, hey, we're friends with this guy who's making a movie with the guy from The Walking Dead in it, and they wanted to know if you guys wanted your music in it. And we were just like, actually, it's kind of weird, because like for whatever reason we felt that like wasn't happening, and then the movie came out, and then our music was in it, and people were like tagging us in it and stuff. So it was kind of just like a random sort of like invitation to have our music in a movie. It's definitely it's a cool thing, I guess, to see your music in a movie like that. It was just kind of, I think the section where you can hear our music like really clearly is kind of a silly part. It's that girl, she's kind of just like freaking out or whatever, like, and listening to Perpetual Growth Machine. I don't know. I thought it was a funny scene. But yeah, it's kind of just like a random, like, hey, do you guys want to do this? And we were just like, yeah, sure, I guess. And then it happened.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's one of those things I feel like horror movies and heavy metal kind of go hand in hand. So it's like they belong together. And I know Joe Lynch is a big heavy metal dude himself, so it was kind of cool seeing him get like a band that deserves a little more recognition, to put music in there, even though it's like just a little bit. But even if you look in like the soundtrack credits, I think you guys got like 4 or 5 songs on there.
Yeah, we have a song, Rain Eater. It plays for like 1 second during the title of the movie, Mayhem. It flashes across the screen and Rain Eater's playing. And then there's the longer scene with Perpetual Growth Machine where the girl is like standing over, what's his name from The Walking Dead?
Stephen Yeun.
Yeah, Stephen Yeun. She's standing over him, listening to our music, and then she like beats the shit out of him. Yeah. And then there's another scene where there's like some guy, I think he's like destroying a bonsai plant on his desk, and our song Dehydrate is playing over it. So yeah, there's like, I think we have like, yeah, like you said, 3 or 4 credits in that, and then we actually are, I don't know why, but we actually are credited in that movie Green Room as well.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that movie, but
I have.
We were credited in that. We're in the credits, and no one knows why. Like us and Revocation are both credited in that movie, but like our music's not played in it at all. I mean, maybe there's like a poster or sticker or something like somewhere in the movie that I didn't see, but yeah, it was like kind of weird because one of my friends hit me up and was like, "Yo, are you guys in this movie or something?" And like, I don't know. Are we?
You know what? I think it might be in the beginning of the movie when they're crashing at that dude's house. He's got like band posters all over, and I remember seeing like Dillinger Escape Plan and like Mastodon and stuff like that. So it's possible. It's possible there's something up in there that like is in the background.
That's probably what it is. I assumed it was like just something like a Rivers of Nihil sticker or like a concert poster or something. But still, it's a cool thing. I mean, because like people that don't understand what we do, like, family members, distant family members, or like, dudes that you went to high school with that have no idea what, heavy metal is, when they see, oh, Rivers of Nihil, like that's Brody's band, that's cool. It's like easy for them to, understand it that way, because it's like, oh, well, they're in a movie, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a cool thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool anytime I see like a metal band in something, because it's it's few and far between that there's anything like that in movies. It always seems like such a niche kind of genre that you don't have a main character that's into heavy metal. It's like I think even in the new Power Rangers movie, there's a Revocation song that they played.
Yeah, there is, and that makes sense because Dave Davidson is like, I guess if like there was a Power Rangers guitar player, it would be him, because he's just like true Power Ranger badass of the instrument.
Yeah, that dude is a great guitar player. I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
So, kind of, not necessarily going into the new record just yet, but since kind of the beginning of the band, how do you feel you guys have kind of grown musically since your inception?
Well, when we started, we were kind of like I don't want to say a slam band, but we were kind of a slam band, because we had, just big, chuggy breakdowns with indistinguishable guttural vocals and stuff, and I think that was really just like us all being young and not really knowing how to interpret, heavy music quite yet without just being like outwardly heavy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like those early recordings, like our first EP, I mean, there's some stuff on there that's like, could clue into like what direction we would end up going in. Like there's like, sort of like fusion-y guitar moments, even though they're poorly executed. They're like, there's like moments on there where like you can hear like, oh, this band wants to be more than just like a super heavy death metal band all the time. But like on our second EP, we started venturing out with like the atmosphere thing. I think that was like 2011 we released our second EP, and we started doing the sort of atmosphere thing and like bringing in some more prog influences. But we did our first full length with Erik Rutan. That was our first record with Metal Blade, and that was pretty exclusively like a super heavy death metal record.
Yeah,
it had some of the atmospheric stuff in it, but like there wasn't really that much prog in it, I guess. And then we kind of started slowly, I guess, just like understanding that like, I guess the world doesn't need any more exclusively super heavy all the time death metal bands, because it's like, I don't know, like we're aware of the fact that there's always going to be bands out there that are way better at being super technical than we are, and there's always going to be bands out there that are way better at doing the super heavy thing all the time than we are. So like we kind of just, I guess over the years we've just realized what we're good at and what we're not good at, and we've kind of just honed in on focusing on the things that we are good at. Mm-hmm. So I think really like just the progression of our sound over the years is just like us getting real with ourselves and being like, okay, this is something that you're not good at and it doesn't really work for you. You should probably, focus on something else, like, on the new record, especially like bringing in weird instruments or trying new vocal styles or whatever, like we've always been kind of like we've kind of always been outsiders, I guess. Like, we've never really been able to be fully classified as like an old school death metal band or a brutal death metal band or a tech death band. We've always had like different sprinklings of subgenres in our sound, but I think that on this newest record we've kind of just like fully realized like what kind of band we are and kind of gotten over like fears of trying new things. I don't know, I guess I kind of went off there, but yeah, like,
no, that's what we look for, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I think really just like over the years we've just, like I said, we've kind of just realized what we're good at, and we've also realized like what the world doesn't need more of, I guess. Like we don't, the world doesn't need more bands that are just going to play breakdowns all the time, or more bands that are going to, just be screaming super guttural vocals all the time that, no one can understand. Like, there's so many bands out there already that are doing it really well. So we just kind of, I guess, wanted to just try some new stuff and maybe bring some stuff into the genre that like it isn't as familiar sounding, really.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's my best answer.
Well, I think with like in terms of your guys' full discography, I mean, you're going into your third album now. I think that you guys have done enough stylistically, like, to change up almost every record, and they don't sound the same no matter what you listen to. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, you can't really sit there and put out the same record over and over again unless you're like Cannibal Corpse or something.
Yeah, definitely. Like we wanted to make sure that we didn't do that, especially on this record. Like, going from our first record to the last record, it was pretty easy to make those records sound different because we went with a different production style. Like, I mean, Erik Rutan's style on our first record is much more like old school sounding. And then on our last record, we went to Atrium Audio, where like August Burns Red and Black Crown Initiate record, and we, recorded there. So like the difference between the first and the second record, just like sonically, is like vast. Like they're obviously two different records, but like on this record, this newest record, since we wanted to go back to Atrium Audio again, the production was going to sound similar to our last record, so we wanted to figure out a way to kind of, we had to think of new ways to kind of make this record distinguishable from the last one, and I think that's ultimately what inspired us to like try all the weird stuff that is on the record.
So that sentiment kind of leads into my next question here, which is, what were there any like changes or decisions that the band? Oh my god, I can't talk for some reason. What were the changes, if any, or decisions that the band made kind of consciously or maybe even unconsciously going into the new record?
Well, I guess like it all started like when we first started writing. Before we had any fully completed songs done, we had kind of toyed around with some riffs here and there, and like I write most of the songs at my house. I have like a little studio set up at my house, and I had demoed out some, maybe like 2 minutes of new music, and like it was kind of along the lines of what our last record was like. Like it was, had the atmosphere thing, and it had like, it was mostly like heavy technical riffing stuff, like more like riff technical based kind of stuff. And like we were listening to it, me and Adam Biggs, our bass player, we were listening to it, and we were just kind of like looked at each other and we were like, man, like, do we really want to do this again? Like we should try something else. Like we didn't want to, like I said before, we didn't want to make the same record twice, so we kind of just like threw out the stuff that we had written, the 2 minutes of music or whatever, and just tried to write songs that felt more natural to us. Like I think the first song that we ended up writing for the record and completing was what is now the last song on the record, Capricorn Agoratopia, I think that's what it's called. And that song really encompasses like a lot of new elements that would end up on the record. So I think after we wrote that first song, and you know, we kind of, and when I was writing it, what I really focused on was like not forcing, like I didn't want to be writing a song and thinking like, okay, I have to make this part technical, okay, I have to make this part slow, okay, I have to make this part, you know, really fast. Like I kind of wanted the songwriting to just happen in an organic way. So even though it might have been a slower process than just like forcing out like riffs, I kind of just wanted to write music that felt good on my hand as a guitar player. I know it sounds dumb, but like I wanted all the stuff that we wrote for this new record to like have just like a real organic feel. Like I didn't want it to feel like we were forcing riffs out at all, you know, or trying to sound any specific way really. We just let it happen, I guess, basically. And after we completed that first new song, that has a lot of the elements, you know, the new elements that are heard on the new record on it, it kind of just like snowballed from there. We were like, oh, okay, well, let's just try to keep writing songs like that. Like, I don't know, I guess like it's kind of an abstract way of explaining it when I say like it just feels good on your hands, but like that's pretty much what we did. Like I would sit in my room and I would just basically sit in front of my computer and hit record and just like play the guitar. And like if I would hear something that I liked, you know, I would record it and then kind of just build on it. And like I didn't want to like write any riffs that, you know, I was trying to force out just for the sake of like getting a song done, or just for the sake of like writing a Rivers of Nihil song. Like, yeah, I was just kind of like playing guitar really, and just like if I heard something that I liked, you know, I didn't know if it was going to be used for a Rivers of Nihil song or not, I would record it anyway. And I think that's how a lot of the record ended up getting written, was just by like letting this stuff happen by accident and then building on those accidents and turning them into complete pieces of music.
That's a really interesting way to go about it. Because I do think sometimes, and not all the time, but there are certain times where bands kind of force stuff out just to get it out. Yeah. And it, you know, sometimes it works out and sometimes it's to the detriment of the song and the band, you know, and you can never really know for sure like what the band was kind of going for at that point. But, you know, letting something just kind of come as it comes instead of forcing it seems a smarter way to write to me, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was like at certain points it got to be like a little frustrating because, you know, stuff just wasn't happening. Like I would write like 3 songs, you know, and then nothing would happen for like a couple months. And, you know, I'd get frustrated about it, but I noticed that like if I ever went upstairs into my recording room, if I ever went in with the like with the premonition of like, oh, I'm gonna write today, I would never be able to write. Like if I thought like I'm gonna write a song today, I would never write a song that day. But the days where I sat down at my computer and I would just start screwing around with something like that, you know, was unimportant or didn't matter, those were the days where I would always end up locked in the room for like 12 hours just like writing a song. Like it's weird. Like I guess like on our last record, you know, I did some of this, but I feel like a lot of our last record was me kind of just like thinking like, all right, I'm gonna write a really heavy, really atmospheric death metal record and I'm gonna make these riffs happen. And on this record I did the exact opposite, and I just like I tried not to think about it or anything at all really. And like I said, like just through those accidents and like through that like unawareness of like what was happening, that's how I think a lot of the riffs, you know, came to be on this record.
I bet that feels better too in terms of like, you know, making something like, so got to be a lot more gratifying knowing that it was just kind of this happy accident and you didn't have to force yourself, it just came out, and in the end product was better than you probably could have hoped for.
Yeah, it definitely, and it feels like more personal to me because like, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of what a person is kind of going on at a subconscious level, like on a level that like you don't even realize. You know, like a lot of times, like for example, like if you're in a social situation, someone will tell you you're doing something, or you're doing something with your body or with your the way you're speaking, and you don't even notice it because it's like subconscious. So like I feel like on this record, a lot of the writing took place on sort of a subconscious level, like where I didn't even realize it was happening. And then when it did happen, I would, you know, take those ideas and kind of run with them.
So when did the writing process for all this stuff kind of start? I know you said you started demoing stuff out and then you scrapped it. So how long ago was this?
I'd say probably started like after we scrapped that initial stuff, probably late 2015, early 2016, we started writing. I think I'm pretty sure we completed the first song around like, I don't know, maybe like February or March of 2016. So like probably about 2 years ago now, I guess.
Nice.
But yeah, like we had Monarchy, our last record, out for a while. It came out in August of 2015, I believe. And I think I started writing at the end of that year, and we came up with the first song at the beginning of 2016, and then stuff kind of just started happening pretty quickly from there with writing.
So you do all the guitar stuff in your room, and before you're going into the studio, how much stuff do you have demoed out ready to go?
I mean, when we go into the studio, everything is 100% done. Like, and
Nice.
the other thing to note is that I also record our guitar and our bass. I mean, I don't record the bass. Biggs comes to my house and he records his own bass parts, but I record the guitar and the bass before we even go into the studio. So when we show up at the studio, like literally every single guitar part and bass part, and actually on this record, saxophone and acoustic guitar parts and keyboards and trumpet parts were all recorded before we even went into the studio. So when we got to the studio, we pretty much had an entire record, just handed it to the guys that, you know, at Atrium Audio, and then we recorded drums and vocals and did mixing there. So it was like super laid back, you know, like being that I can record the guitars here at my place, you know, it's like I could take as much time as I need. Like I think I took about a month and a half to record guitars, but it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like I was recording 12 hours a day or anything. Like I might record, you know, for 8 hours one day and then take 3 days off and then, you know, do 5 hours another day, you know. So it was like, because we weren't, you know, in the studio being charged for the time, it allowed us to like stay pretty relaxed and just, you know, experiment with stuff along the way. And by the time we actually got into the studio, it was just like, here you go, and this is it. So it was pretty laid back process, I would say.
Yeah, this is something I'm noticing a lot more these days is, you know, bands don't necessarily spend as much time in the studio as, you know, back in like say the 90s, you know, up until like the early millennium, because there's no need for it. Like everything can be done at home. You have the same amount of technology as the studio has at your fingertips, and it's much more convenient than having to spend so much money in a studio, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the shift in the industry around, you know, 2000.
Yeah.
Just that's when all the big budgets went out the window. That's when bands stopped getting, you know, huge recording budgets. I mean, like, I think I remember seeing a picture somewhere of like Pantera's like bonus check for Far Beyond Driven being like $1 million or something. You know, like that just doesn't exist nowadays. So I think, you know, a lot of bands are getting smarter about how they spend their money.
Yeah.
I do think that, going back to what I said earlier, though, I do think that some bands are taking it like a little too far with like the editing, since like, you know, you're in the comfort of your own home and you can kind of like do whatever sneaky magic on your stuff that you want to do without feeling ashamed, you know, because in a studio, a producer might look down on that or whatever. So I think some bands get carried away with it, you know, or they'll just like reamp guitar profiles, which is like so shot, you know. But I mean, you know, I think some some people get carried away with what they're able to do on their own, but I do think that the majority of the people out there, they've just gotten smarter about how they spend their money, and I think that it's allowing, younger bands especially to be able to really experiment with, new stuff, because they're not like on the clock at a studio that's charging them, $500 a day or whatever.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that bands that came before you kind of ruined the whole thing of like record advances and stuff. We would read all the time about, like Black Sabbath blowing half their like $700,000, recording budget on cocaine, and same thing with like Motley Crue, and
yep,
it's just insane. And I had a friend of mine and a former guest on the show. He didn't tell us exactly how much it was, but he's friends with the guys in that band Stryper, that Christian metal band.
Oh yeah.
And he was telling me that one of their records, like how much they got to record it was like over $1 million, and I was just like,
yeah.
How?
With them, you have the fact that like they're an old school band, so they were in it when the money was around back in the day, and they're also a Christian band, so like you have like the backup of like the church as well, so like that's an interesting market, the like the Christian metal scene. Like I've heard stories, not just about old bands either. I've heard stories about newer Christian metal acts that some of the advances that those bands, for whatever reason in particular, get is astonishing.
Yeah, I remember that was a thing for a little while, that metal bands were latching on to like the label of Christian metal, and getting like their first record or first couple records out, and then being like, oh yeah, actually we weren't Christian at all, we just kind of wanted to get our music out there. It's just like, whoa.
That's a real thing. I mean I obviously don't want to use any names, but I mean, not at all. That's definitely a real thing that exists.
Yeah. So how long, so you said it took you like a couple months to record the guitars on and off?
Yeah, guitar and bass, it was like I think I started in July and we finished in early September sometime.
Okay. So were there any like kind of challenges or roadblocks that you guys hit, or was it pretty smooth sailing like from start to finish?
For guitar and bass, you mean?
Just for like the whole recording process in general, yeah.
Not really. I mean, it was pretty easy. I mean, not easy, but I mean, it was pretty. There weren't really any hang-ups, I guess. I mean, I did everything alone, guitar-wise, and so like any problems that I had, with myself, I worked out with myself. It wasn't like I was battling with a producer or anything like that. So I mean, it was I mean, I can't really think of any like problems that we had. I mean, we recorded acoustic guitar with my friend Nick. He plays bass for the band Black Crown Initiate. So we recorded acoustic guitar with him. I just went up to his house one night and, we hung out for a couple hours and tracked the guitar there, acoustic guitar, and then the saxophone and trumpet parts. We went to another one of my friend's studios, did those there, and then took the stuff that I did here, guitar and bass-wise, and just combined it with that stuff and took it to the, the big studio in Lancaster and just combined it all. Yeah, I mean, it was like really, I couldn't have really asked for like a more seamless process. Like there were no hang-ups, nothing, like no real issues at all. I mean, everyone that we worked with on this record is just like super pro at what they do, and they know how we operate and we know how we operate. And I guess the only stuff that slowed us down really was the computers. If they could took a long time to export tracks, or froze or whatever. I mean, that was pretty much it. But I mean, I would say that process wise though, this was really a seamless sort of process. I mean, our drummer Jared, he lives in Reno, and I would send him my own rough ideas of drum parts for him, and then I would send him click tracks as well, so that he could take my ideas and kind of just write his own based on them. So he was out there while we were recording guitar. He was out in Reno just practicing the songs, practicing the record from front to back, and writing his parts. And when he showed up, I think he recorded drums in like 2 days. I mean, it was just like
nice,
super fast. I guess the thing that took the longest really was the vocals, because I mean, with a vocalist, you can't, especially with like metal vocals, you can't really force anything, or else your voice is going to blow out and then you're screwed. So I mean, I think the thing that took the longest really was just tracking the vocals.
Nice. Well, that's good that it went pretty seamless like that. You never know, especially with technology, some things never always goes planned, but that's good to hear. It went pretty easy.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's the one thing on the record, and I know it's kind of hard to do this objectively when it's like your own piece of art, but what's the one thing you were the most proud about with this record?
I guess like do you mean like song, or do you just mean thing in general?
It could be both. I mean, if you're really, really proud of a song, or maybe something you did in general with the whole record that you're just like, damn, that's cool, I can't believe we did that. The thing that you're really proud about.
I guess like probably just like the thing that I'm the most proud of is that we did so many like new things for the band on this record, and so many things that like might not typically be used in a death metal record.
Mm-hmm.
We did all this stuff, and at the end it all still sounds like us. Like I guess like at least that's what I've been told. Like, I mean, I could say that to myself all day long, but I've heard from a lot of other people that like they think that even though we have all this like new weird stuff on the record, that like it still is very clearly Rivers of Nihil, and it's still obviously like us. So I mean, I think that that's something that a lot of bands, they try to bring in new stuff, like whether it's clean vocals or instrumentation, or the sequencing of songs or whatever. They try like new stuff, and a lot of times it just comes up as like, or it comes across as like an identity crisis.
Yeah.
And like people are a lot of times turned off by that. Listeners get turned off by that. But I think that on this record we brought in a lot of like stuff that could be considered like identity crisis material, but like we did it in a way that like still sounds very much like us, and doesn't I don't know, it doesn't, we haven't really lost any of our listeners. It seems like they're all like welcoming the changes, and they're like really excited about what we've released so far. So I guess that if there's one thing, it's that, because I mean, I never in 1,000 years would have thought that we would have been putting a trumpet on a Rivers of Nihil record, but like when you hear it, it sounds like something we would do, and that's weird to me, but like for whatever reason it worked. So
yeah, I kind of dig that when bands use like trumpets and saxophones, because I listen to like a lot of like for instance like Ishan, like he has a new record coming out, but he uses saxophone all the time, and I love how it sounds in tandem with like the aggressiveness of the music. It goes really well for whatever reason. Yeah,
that his record After, I think it was from 2008 or 2009. That was like for a long time like one of my favorite records. Like that, he's one of the best at doing that, and he's a good example of like a guy that he came from like the black metal background, and now on his new stuff, he's got like 80s sounding guitar riffs and like saxophones and like weird noises and stuff, but it's still like it sounds like him. I don't know, like I think that's a difficult thing to do, to totally change up your sound but still have it be your sound. So I mean that's the thing that I think all of us are the most proud of on this record.
That's good, man. That's good. I know it's kind of hard to kind of look at things a little objectively when you're so closely involved with him, especially from an artistic perspective, but that's good to hear that you guys are really proud of like the chances you've taken while kind of retaining your own like personal integrity and sound in with that.
Yeah, definitely.
So just to wrap up here, we're gonna do something a little new that I've never really done before, but I thought of this the other day, and I was like, I should do it on the Rivers of Nihil interview. What, just for fun, make any band with any members alive or dead, who would you put in that band?
Oh, probably Roger Waters, John Coltrane. Damn, it's hard. Roger Waters, John Coltrane, David Gilmour probably. I know that's like half Pink Floyd right there, but probably David Gilmour and Roger Waters, and then John Coltrane. Maybe trying to think of drummers.
Yeah, drummers are a little hard. They're pretty rare to have one.
Maybe the guy from Opeth, Axelrod. I forget what his first name is.
Yeah. It's not
maybe
a bad
him.
one.
Yeah, maybe him. Him, John Coltrane, Roger Waters, David Gilmour, and bass. Bass. Do Bootsy Collins maybe.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah, maybe him or. What's his name from Primus? I'm an idiot right now.
Oh, Les Claypool?
We'll switch that out for Les Claypool. And keyboards.
Ooh, keyboards, nice.
Maybe whoever played keys on Miles Davis's Kind of Blue. I forget what his name is, but that guy.
That's an interesting band. I would listen to that. That's a ton of great musicians in there.
Yeah, you got like guys from the 40s, guys from the 60s, and guys from now. So yeah, it'd be an interesting lineup.
Cool, man. So let everybody know where they can find the record and where to get it.
Okay, yeah. You can find our record on iTunes, in any record stores that you might frequent. It's going to be on all streaming services: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music. You can get it on Amazon. We also have some really cool pre-order packages, including some sweet vinyl variants available now on Indie Merch.
Nice.
IndieMerchStore.com, so people can go check that out. And yeah, I mean, our we're on all the social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I think we're on everything except for Snapchat, but cool. I don't understand Snapchat.
Yeah, I don't either, dude. That's one of those really, things I'm just like, I'm probably too old for this. Who cares?
Yeah, I don't understand it at all. But yeah, so we're on pretty much all of the major ones. But yeah, I mean, anywhere you can normally get music, you can pick up the new stuff. But yeah, definitely check out the Indie Merch store, because we have a lot of really cool options on there for pre-order stuff.
Cool. Yeah, well, let's see, this will probably get put out not this coming Monday, but the Monday after, and we will link up to like all that stuff in our website notes, so that way people can find everything and hopefully get you guys some more pre-orders.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the new record for sure.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a good one. Yeah. All right.
Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!